So now it is my pleasure to welcome Katie Slivovsky, who is the Exhibit Development Director at the Chicago Children's Museum, and she is the LGBTQ Access and Inclusion Chair. So I'd like to turn the program over to Katie at this point.
Okay, hey everyone, how are ya? It's gonna just take me a second here. I'm gonna pull up my slides for you, but I'm happy to be with you tonight. I was told that my necklace looked like a COVID mask hanging from my neck. So, you know, these are crazy times, right? Here we are. All righty, so we are going to talk about some easy ways to be more LGBTQ friendly. You can see here that I've done 10 minus 3 because we're not going to have time to get to all 10. We're at about 40 minutes of my presentation, and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. So what we're going to do tonight, we're hoping to build awareness, empathy, and understanding, share some vocabulary and appropriate language, and help you explore how to be a better ally. So this is me. Hello, everyone. Surprise, I'm straight. This is my husband, Jim. We've been married over 30 years. So you might be wondering, why is this straight person talking to me about LGBTQ stuff, right? Well, I feel like I have a particular lens as an ally. So this little icon here is a lens. I have a lens as an ally. I'm hoping to ignite a fire in other potential allies. That is really my goal. So if you are a member of the LGBTQ community, welcome and thank you for being here. And please, in the chat, you can privately message me if you feel I say something that is not correct or could be improved. I welcome that. But I am not here to teach you anything. I am here to try to inspire other allies to really support the LGBTQ community. So this is where I work, Chicago Children's Museum. I am the co-chair of this committee, a nice group of 10 or 12 folks from all different departments that work together to make sure that the museum is inclusive to our LGBTQ staff, volunteers, and visitors. I'm also a co-founder of CAMP. And some of you heard me chatting up my friend Richard, who is on this call. He is also a co-founder of CAMP. So Richard and I and a bunch of other museum people in Chicago got together and we created this group, the Chicagoland Alliance of Museums with Pride. And we believe that Chicagoland's museums are enriched when staff and visitors of all gender expressions, sexual orientations, and family configurations are intentionally welcomed and included. This is the Camp Council that met last year. And Richard, I hope you see yourself in there. There you are, front and to the right, seated with a tie. Our mission is to inspire, inform, and equip Chicagoland's museum professionals to make our environments more welcoming and inclusive. So that's just a little background on me. So I wanted to tell you, what does LGBTQ inclusion look like at a children's museum? So just want to give you some examples. We host events. We have an event called International Family Equality Day, which is the first Sunday of every May, where we honor and celebrate LGBTQ families. And at that event and throughout the year, we have drag queen story time. If you have never attended a drag queen story time in your life, it is a must-see. Here you're seeing other partners from PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, which is a wonderful activist group in multiple chapters. I'm sure lots of you are aware of them already. And then other community partners such as Gender Cool. So these are some photos from the Children's Museum. We also do staff training. So building in LGBTQ awareness vocabulary, similar to what we're doing tonight, you know, that is ongoing at the museum as far as making sure that our staff are up on the latest language. And this picture you're looking at here are some of the folks that have spoken with us and to us. Kyle with the guitar is a trans male who talked about his experience as a child and teenager in an effort to help our staff understand him. And then the woman holding the piece of paper, that's Teresa Volpe and her wife Mercedes. And Teresa was a former intern of mine, and she and Mercedes were the first lesbian couple married in the state of Illinois as a thank you for all the advocacy work they did. So I've told you that I am a straight person, but you really need to know that I partner and listen very deeply to our LGBTQ advisors, and half of that committee is also LGBTQ. So it takes all of us to do this work, allies and people in the community. I've written a lot of different articles. If you just Google my name, some of this stuff will pop up. This particular article is something that I co-wrote with Teresa, who I just mentioned. So I don't know, maybe you're asking, why is this so important to Chicago Children's Museum? Here we go. So here's our president. Because we know every child benefits when they see themselves and their family configuration represented in the world around them. It is simply what's best for children. This is not controversial. This is not political. This is best practices for early childhood. And I'll tell you more about that. We reach out to those facing discrimination. So here's just a quote from a survey that we did. And this person is saying, in my experience, schools, museums, and other public spaces serving children are really heavily depicting those traditional heterosexual families. So people are not feeling represented and visible. We care about children, right? Here's a former coworker of mine talking with me, and she was saying that when she was in preschool, she mentioned she had 2 moms, and her teachers told her not to talk about that. Now, if any of you are educators, can you imagine a child sharing information about their family and then you telling them not to talk about it? I mean, that is really just the biggest way to hurt a child, is deny them their family. If you know anything about early childhood, I mean, families really are of primary importance to all children's development. It is their entire world. So they need to be able to see themselves and their families in their world. Again, we care about children. Now look at this, 2010, so this is 10 years ago, because we started our initiative in 2011. But this article came out in 2010. Now NACE, you see it down there at the bottom, NACE is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And that organization put out this article, and these were their 4 points. When we are not including LGBTQ representation, children are being harmed. Educators have a responsibility to make things better for children. Educators can take steps and actions, and support is available. So this was a real call to action in 2010 by a highly respected early childhood organization. So it was great support to help us launch our initiative. So here we go. So many of us that are here identify as women. So we might have had a little bit of experience feeling invisible or unseen. The experience of being welcome or unwelcome, visible or invisible, begins in early childhood. When children never hear words or see images that reflect their families or themselves in positive ways, they are being harmed, right? So it's an error of omission. This is my favorite quote by Adrienne Rich. When someone with the authority of a teacher describes the world and you're not in it, there's a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked into a mirror and saw nothing. I'm gonna see you guys real quick. I'm gonna go to my gallery view, see some faces. I don't know, I wish I could ask you a question, but that quote is really powerful for me because I think it's so important if you are not part of a marginalized group, so particularly our straight white males that might be on this call, it really takes some imagination to think, what would that be like? You know, to just never see your life reflected in your community. Okay, so this part is my least favorite part. I hate this part, but I'm going to include it because it's important. This program is titled 10 Easy Ways to Be More LGBTQ Friendly because the actions truly are easy, The hard part is deciding to do them. And the hard part is actually sort of acknowledging how severe this problem is when we don't support and recognize our LGBTQ students and adults in our lives. So here's a piece of research. Center for Disease Control in 2016 did a nationally representative study of the health risks of lesbian, gay, and bisexual high school students. So not our trans students, but just lesbian, gay, and bisexual. And I'm going to share some statistics with you, and I will just tell you right now, they're terrible. More than 40% of our lesbian, gay, and bisexual students have seriously considered suicide. 29% reported having attempted suicide during the past 12 months. LGBT students are up to 5 times more likely than other students to report using illegal drugs, self-medication. More than 1 in 10 students reported missing school during the past 30 days of the survey due to safety concerns. School, right? Okay, this might be a little hard for you to read, I don't know, but down at the bottom, well, you can see these different stats, but what you want to do is compare the middle column and the right column, because the middle column is our heterosexual students, and then to the right, under the orange headline, those are our LGB students, and you can see the attempted suicide rate is 4 times as much. I'm seriously considering suicide 3 times as much. So I hate this part, right? But this is life and death for our students, for their mental health, right? So I just, just have to really include this information, as awful as it is to face it. So these students are at greater risk. And I believe we can do better. When I was in high school in the 80s, teachers, adults were actually participating in bullying or in affirming bullying. Then maybe we improved a little bit and there was some ignoring of bullying. Then we thought the whole, okay, great, now we get it, we're gonna stop the bullying. But you know what? That's not enough either. What we really need to do is create a culture of acceptance. That's what this is really about. That's what these tips are about. So we don't have time for 10, we're gonna do 7. So here we go. I'm gonna check the time. Okay, so number 1, use names and pronouns people ask you to use, even if they don't make sense to you or they change while you know them. Now, what this is referring to is particularly a trans person, right? So maybe you met them as Joe and now they want to be called Jill. And you might be thinking, oh my God, I will never get used to that, right? Or you just can't figure out why they changed their name. You just don't understand it. Well, let me ask you all a question. Think for a minute, what name appears on your birth certificate? So just think about that for a second. And whether or not that exactly matches the name that you like to go by. So for example, on my birth certificate, it says Catherine. And I do not use the name Catherine. I only use the name Catherine when I'm buying a car, signing a lease, or going to the OBGYN. So please don't call me Catherine. I would like for you to call me Katie. Call me Katie. So like if you are going to kind of insist on calling me Catherine because that's how I was introduced to you, or that's how you met me, or that's the name you think fits me, that kind of makes you a little bit of a jerk, right? Call me Katie. It's just the most simple thing you can do is call a person by the name they're asking you to call them. And the same goes for pronouns, whether they go from a he to a she to a he, or they want you to say they, them, or some other pronoun. And I know it's a stickler for people. They get all hung up on that they, them pronoun, but believe me, you can do it. You can practice and you can do it. And look, here is a singular use of the they, them pronoun. It exists in the English language. So what you really want to think about at the end of the day, you learned that a certain way in grade school. But is it more important to stick to that and be right, or to honor the person who is asking you to call them by a certain name or pronoun? It's really the most basic thing you can do. So that's tip 1. Tip 2 is show signs of welcome. Now, right now, I have a Black Lives Matter sign on my window of my home. Growing up, I had a rainbow heart by my front door because I wanted every single friend of my 2 kids to know that that our home was welcoming to them. Remember, you know, the mental health issues and the teen suicide. I wanted every single friend of my kids to know that I had a safe place. So yes, I'm talking about putting one of these signs on your home, put it on your car, get that Black Lives Matter sign out there, you know, show visible signs of welcome. How else will they know, right? How else will folks know? This graphic you're looking at right here is on every entrance to Chicago Children's Museum. And it's just crucial that families know that they are welcome with us. After we put this sign up, we got this thank you note in the mail. In a world that does not always welcome non-traditional couples, it was wonderful to know that there are places where we are allowed and invited. Thank you for being something good in the world. To me, that's very bittersweet. It's lovely that they chose to write that note, but I mean, it's very sad when you think about it. It's wonderful to know there are places where I'm allowed and invited. These are 2 women in their mid-20s. They didn't have children. They didn't even come into the Children's Museum. But they walked by the museum and saw that sign, and they were so moved by it. They wrote us this note and sent us a $25 check. I mean, so do not underestimate the power of the visible symbol. Provide a safe place to potty. Now, you know, I know I'm talking to AAUW, but you all have connections to communities, libraries, churches, you know, wherever you are in your life, we should have these all gender bathroom signs on bathroom doors. And here's an ally moment. I talked about that lens. Let's see if any of you have thought about this. I mean, can you imagine what it might be like if you're a trans person or a gender nonconforming person, or a woman that kind of expresses herself in a little bit more of a traditional male way, or vice versa? You might not feel like you have a safe place to go to the bathroom once you leave your home. So here's this quote: "The problem was a daily one. I'd think about where I was going, what bathrooms I'd have access to, how much I drank during the day, whether I'd be with people who could help stand guard," right? And we know there's this ridiculous fear of trans people in bathrooms. There's not one single case of a trans person harming a person in a bathroom, and there are lots and lots of cases of trans people being beat up in bathrooms. So let's be sure we understand the facts of that situation. So here, you're involved in a church, a library. There's probably a multi-purpose single stall bathroom somewhere, like a family bathroom or something like that. All you have to do is spend $27 and get this all gender bathroom sign put up on that door. And look at the message you're gonna send. You're gonna include people that don't feel comfortable going into this girl bathroom or boy bathroom, right? And if you haven't thought about it, take a little time to think about it. That's what we have to do as allies. We've got to like work at getting our heads in the space of somebody else's life to make sure that everyone is welcome. That is our job. Okay, so here's a big one. This is an interesting one, and I believe in you. You can do this. We're going to avoid the gender binary, right? So we're going to try to stop referring to men, women, male, female, boys, girls. And I'm going to hopefully help you understand how that is. So there's an activity that I do, and you heard a person, I think it was Marianne earlier, saying that she remembered this activity and she remembered what color she had. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of explain the activity a little bit. And if you want, you could like, I don't know if you can go on like speaker view, I guess, so you could see me because we're going to be on this slide for a minute. So what I do is I get the group. So imagine there's 40 of us right now, and all 40 of you are going to kind of stand in a clump in front of me. So we're in a big open space. I'm standing in the middle, and all 40 of you are kind of in front of me. And I'm going to hand out a little piece of paper to each and every one of you. So I'm going to give you a card, and it's either going to be green or blue on that card. So I'm going around, I'm handing you a green or a blue piece of paper. You don't know your color quite yet because it's upside down. So you're just holding onto this piece of paper. You're not sure which color you have. And what I'm gonna say next then is, when you turn your card over, if your card is green, you're gonna go line up over here. If your card is blue, you're gonna line up over here. So right now, people are really concentrating on like, okay, if it's green, I go there. If it's blue, I go there. And they're sort of like, I don't know which color I'm gonna get. I'm gonna, whatever. Okay, so now we're gonna pretend that you've got that card in your hand, and I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, go, and you're gonna flip that card. And when you flip the card, this is the color you see. So you're thinking, green over here, blue over there, I'm paying attention, I got it, those are my rules, and then you see this. Or maybe your card is this color. Or maybe your card is this color. Or maybe your card is this color. So when I do this activity with people, it's very powerful, because what I tell them is they have to choose, they have to decide where to stand, and they're not allowed to talk to me or anyone else. And it's very interesting because what I've done is I've given out 40 different colors. Some of them are green, some of them are blue, some are orange, some are teal, and some are blue with the word green, and some are green with the word blue. So that means that a subset of our group of 40 is holding a card that is orange or teal or blue with the word green, and they do not know where to stand. And it's uncomfortable. And then what we do is we talk to each and every person about how they felt when they were given these two choices, but the thing that they identified with did not fit into either category. So that is kind of a metaphor for what it's like to not feel completely female or completely male. Maybe you feel a little bit of both, or neither, or any other beautiful place on this, lovely mix of humanity. So what we need to try to do is back off from creating this world that is only these two categories. We want to make room for these oranges and teals. I hope that's making sense. This is my first time trying to do this digitally. I wanted to show you this because these are paint chips from like a paint store. And if you would like to facilitate this activity yourself with a group, or do it in person next time you all meet in person, I will email a facilitation guide to Kate, and you can connect with Kate, and she can give you a 5-page written instruction about how to do that activity and how to talk through it. And the supplies that you need would be these free paint chips that you pick up at like Home Depot. So maybe, we can talk about that in the Q&A if you have questions about that, but I guess I'll keep going. So because we are avoiding this false binary, this false idea that there are just two choices, we at the museum never address groups by gender. We never say, hey, boys and girls, hey, moms and dads. We say, hi, friends, hi, artists, hi, party goers. And we absolutely never divide groups by gender. Again, when you do that, you're just forcing children to fit themselves into these brackets that just aren't big enough for every child. And then, of course, we never ask visitors to check a box that says male or female. you know, and you can see how like the whole marketing thing has gone crazy with it. Even these gender reveals kind of worry me, because it's like, oh my God, you know, do not get sucked into this nonsense of boys like trucks and girls like art and dolls. It's like, no, children like art and trucks and nature and dolls, right? This to me is so ironic. Like, we don't let our boys play with dolls, and then we're really pissed when our husbands don't want to help take care of our babies. I mean, you know, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So we want all children to have access to all kinds of activities. Okay, so tip number 5 is to broaden your knowledge of gender and sexual orientation. So I'm going to kind of share some vocabulary. So here's a great resource. If you just Google the gender unicorn, you can pick this up, the gender unicorn. And what we're seeing here is just kind of a fun graphic that really gets at the complexity of gender. We're talking about gender identity, gender expression, which is different from gender identity. We're talking, and both of those things are different from your biology, the sex you were assigned at birth, which can also be different from who you're physically attracted to and who you're emotionally attracted to, right? And believe me, this isn't even as complex as all this gender stuff is. So, but this is a nice graphic for you. Okay, so everyone has a gender identity, okay? I am a cisgender person. My gender identity is the same as what I was assigned at birth. There are transgender people in this world, and that's when their gender identity is different from what they were assigned at birth. Everyone has a gender identity. And you might have heard this abbreviated version of cis, like I am a cis, straight, white female. That's how I identify. Okay, so gender transition. This is the process by which some people strive to more closely align their outward identity with the gender they know themselves to be. Okay, I share this with you because a teacher friend of mine, she teaches, I think, 3rd grade, and she was doing vocabulary, and the word was trans. It was a prefix, but the word was trans, and the kid was supposed to draw something, and look what the kid drew. The kid drew transgender, a person going from female to male. So I love this. It's like, it's happening, people. Like the 3rd graders know what trans is. And so, you know, we want to like stay with it, keep up with it, right? Okay, when we think about this gender transition, there's three, maybe more, but at least 3 ways we can think about it. Social transition. This can include a name change, change in pronouns, change in appearance, clothes, or hairstyle. Legal transition, updating identity documents, birth certificates. Medical transition. This might be hormone blockers or surgery. Any of these 3 are legitimate transitions. If somebody you know, say they, for example, cuts their hair and says, "Would please start calling me Joe," please start calling them Joe. I mean, that is a legitimate transition. It is not for you to, you know, balk at that. We want to support what these individuals need to do to be happy. Okay, sorry. Down at the bottom it says, what do these 3 things have in common? And I like to say, they're none of our business. You know, I do a lot of these for like teachers and work environments right now. Clearly, if you're in a family unit and if you have a relative, you know, that can be your business to reach out to that person, make sure they know you're supportive. And if they're sharing with you, that's a wonderful compliment to you, and you should learn all you can and be supportive, right? But like in a work environment or even at AAUW, you know, like if somebody says, you know, I'm transgender, please start calling me Jill. You don't say, oh, well, did you have surgery? Did you remove your genitalia? You know, that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't dig into the details. That's just nosy, and it's none of our business. If somebody feels comfortable enough with you to tell you that, that is a huge compliment to you, and you're doing a good job. Oh my gosh, such a freaking bummer, everybody. So I'm sorry, but this is really, really horrible that the healthcare protections for our transgender community members, friends, and family are being rolled back. So Obama put some in place, Trump is rolling them back. And remember those statistics about, I'm sorry, but think about that suicide stuff. I mean, this is just not okay. We're gonna keep going here. Okay, the next slide, I posted this on my Facebook page, and I said, do you have any idea how devastating this is for families raising trans children? And I have permission. I checked with this friend of mine because they left me a comment, and I asked if I could share it with you tonight, and they said I could. So I guess I'll read it just in case. I'm not so sure if everybody can read. So this is my colleague. As a trans person attempting to transition, this makes my life monumentally harder and more dangerous to live, meaning the rollback of the protections. I'm already on attempt number 10 to get top surgery covered by my insurance, a life-saving procedure that's medically necessary for a number of reasons outside of my being trans. Severe back pain, rib trauma exacerbated by binding, severe mental health effects, multiple injuries to the spine that are made worse by the weight of breasts. Myself and countless others have attempted or succeeded in suicide over lack of access to this care already. This is nothing short of willful and knowledgeable murder of trans people at the hands of our government. Yuck. Ugh. Just, ugh. So thank you, friend, for letting me share that. Okay, so continuing. We're still on our vocabulary, thinking about sexual orientation. That is who you love, who you are attracted to. By the way, some of these definitions are kind of for like a third grade audience, which I think make them really good for a lot of us. So here, heterosexual is who you love. You're attracted to someone of an opposite gender. Lesbian, same gender two women. Gay, same gender two men. Bisexual, either genders. Pansexual, any gender. Kind of an interesting distinction between bisexual and pansexual. So that's another whole interesting conversation. But if you're interested in that, you know, explore that, look it up. You probably have heard this term. I think this is a really important term, heteronormative. That is the assumption that heterosexuality is the given or default sexual orientation instead of one of many possibilities, and that the preferred or default relationship is between two people of opposite genders. So we live in a highly heteronormative society. Now that has improved in recent years, and it still is improving, but we have so much further to go. So, you know, we're starting to see like gay couples and commercials and that sort of thing. That's getting away from a heteronormative society. Okay, this is just a stupid word, homophobia. The fear and hatred of or discomfort with people who are attracted to members of the same sex or gender. Doesn't it just sound so stupid? Like, why would you be fearful and hateful of someone because of who they love? Makes no sense to me. Okay, and a bit of good news, right? This also happened very recently. Yay! Supreme Court rules that LGBTQ workers are protected from job discrimination. This just happened a few days ago. So let me share another slide. Newsflash, if you've never had a Supreme Court case decide if you have the same rights as others, you have privilege. I think that's really powerful. Okay, so I want to say something about protesting. What you're looking at here is a picture of two trans women. Sylvia's on the left and Marsha P. Johnson is on the right. And these two trans women were part of the Stonewall riots 50 years ago in New York, when the police were going right into these bars, just beating people up, throwing them in jail, printing their names in the newspaper the next day, and they would be fired from their jobs. So there were riots. The Stonewall riots happened 50 years ago, and that was the beginning of Pride, which we now celebrate joyfully, gleefully, beautifully, happily. Just remember that that all started with police brutality and people rioting in the streets. So I say that because I know we have riots going on right now, and there's a lot of judgment about that. But, you know, when people are getting beat up and don't feel heard, what else can they do? So, you know, I guess what I will say is I certainly understand the look how pissed I am, and I'm just, you know, sitting in my living room. I can't stand this kind of exclusion of other people, right? And judgment, and let alone beating them up. So I want you to recall the next time you see a little perky Pride commercial and there's two little cute gay white males kissing, it was Black trans women that started the riots in Stonewall. So if you're interested, Google that. It's awesome, interesting story. Okay, we're getting there, people. Oh gosh, all right. Be a better ally. How to be a better ally. An ally is someone who speaks up in the moment for someone else, comforts them privately, or gets help for that person. I want to tell you about my favorite ally. So hopefully you're still on, Richard, and your mom is on. This is my mom, and she's one of my favorite allies. She had the idea to put rainbow stickers, importance of that visual, right, at all the storefronts in her small little town of Irvine, Iowa. And she went door to door and bought these decals, $3 each, and asked the store owners if they would put one on their storefront. And there are now 25 stores in tiny little Irvine. I didn't even know there were that many stores that have these stickers. Her first thought was to buy the stickers and ask the high school Pride Club to do it. And she did reach out to them, but they were a little hesitant to do it. So she did it. She did it herself. And this is why. She says, I know I'm safe from the very rejection that is so hurtful and harmful to the people we are supporting. For me to feel any rejection at all is a reminder of what they face all the time. So I thought that was a great example of kind of sharing the work. You know, look at this graphic. This is something I developed, allies. Show up. So show up. You're showing up tonight. Shut up. That means listen. Listen especially to people in the community. Read, listen, pay attention. Then shoulder the burden, right? Shake off the mistakes and share the work. And so that's what you see me doing. I am now sharing the work, but only because I did all that other stuff first. We talked about invisibility and how that's a problem. You have the power to make people visible. Okay, this is my last tip because I want to give time for some questions. So this is a way for you to discover and learn about your own biases and your own blind spots. So you see down there at the bottom, if you just Google Harvard Implicit Bias Test, this will come up and you can take this really interesting test and and it'll let you know where your biases are. And it's so important to recognize them so that you can then work to overcome them. There are resources on the website at Chicago Children's Museum. So if you Google Chicago Children's Museum LGBTQ, you'll see the top one there. It says 5 easy ways parents can be more LGBTQ friendly. And there are several other articles. And there's some information too about the trainings and workshops if you want to have one of those. Okay, I think I'm going to stop sharing so I can see people. Yay, people are still there. Okay, so do we want to unmute? Do we have any questions? What do you want to do now, folks?
So far, we don't have any questions.
Oh, all right.
So, do you want to go on for another few minutes?
Well,
you got to 6. Can you do 7?
No, I did all 7. So,
okay.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Are your slides? This is Marty Sladek.
Okay, Marty.
Are your
What's
slides
your
going to be
question?
available?
I think Marty is talking. Let's let Marty talk first. Go ahead, Marty.
That's okay. Well, I was I wasn't sure exactly how to respond. When you spoke at the Downers Grove branch, Katie, I was standing with a friend of mine whom I know to be lesbian. She's not out, but she doesn't really hide it. And there was another person there. We were just chatting after your presentation, and this other person said, well, I've never met a lesbian. And I said, how do you know? But I, you know, and she kind of looked at me like, I don't know, they were supposed to be wearing badges or something. And my other friend didn't respond at all. What do you do in an awkward situation like that? Because it was clearly someone who had a stereotype in mind. You know, it was partly a generational thing, I think, but how do you respond in a situation like that?
Well, okay, two things come to mind. The first is, I love what you said right away, is how do you know? And I guess the second thing I will say to anybody, and you would probably want to think about how to finesse this and say this constructively, but I might try to let that person know that if they don't, they have not made themselves the kind of person where their lesbian coworkers or even family members feel comfortable talking to them, because we know they are there. We know they're there. So if this person isn't aware, maybe they could be doing more in their life so that they can have interactions, because you know you know that there are people in their life that are lesbians that are not comfortable talking to her. So I don't know, does that make sense? Anybody have another idea?
Yeah, because clearly the other woman there wasn't or didn't feel like she was in a position to respond.
Hell no, right? Like, I mean, you know, I had a neighbor growing up, and she suspected that her husband's sister was gay, and she was like irritated that sister hadn't talked to her about it. And I was like, look, Carolyn, you know, you got to make yourself welcoming. You know, why would she's not going to come right out. And this is 20 years ago. You know, it's on us, allies. It is on us. That is why you have that visible sign of welcome. That is why you talk about LGBTQ rights and equality. You know, it's on you to make yourself a welcoming person that others feel comfortable talking to you. And notice I never have said anything tonight about approval. Like, people are who they are. They're, you know, this isn't about approval or not. This is just loving and accepting people. You know, especially when we're talking about children and their family structures or their identities. Like, it's not up to anyone else to judge or approve. Either way, it is on us to welcome and honor and recognize these people. That is what's healthy for them.
I just want to mention, in my family, we have two trans, two of our grandchildren, and our niece is gay. She got married last year to her girlfriend.
Well,
yay! All that.
You're doing something right in your family. That's good.
You have to accept people as they are, not as what you want. And if anyone has issues, I'm a member of the Chicago branch AUW. You can find me. We've been living this for years now. And one thing is, if you have a real good relationship with the person who's gay or especially trans, and I'm always making the mistake. I mean, for 12 years, Riley was a girl, dresses and all that. And Riley is a boy. And when I say Riley's father gets mad at me and says, no, no, no. And it's like, Riley will go, oh, forget it, Dad. Because the relationship between me and Riley, and they live in Korea, so we see them once a year, maybe. And we do Skype and that, but at that point, you're not saying she, he, whatever. And if your relationship is really good, the pronoun isn't going to make a difference. It's how you relate to the person.
I appreciate that, and I think that's great, and I do support that. I also would encourage all of us to really practice. And
Right.
yeah, you're not getting to interact much. You don't get much practice. But seriously, like I had an intern that used they, them pronouns, and I'm vacuuming the house and I'm practicing those pronouns. And I hear you. I'm not disagreeing with you that you have that tight relationship and good. That's wonderful. It also just honors your relatives if you can just, the fewer mistakes you make, the better.
Right.
When you make mistakes, not if, but when, shake it off as briefly as
Right.
you can.
And
keep
just
going.
continue on where you were rather than blah, 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 blah.
Yes,
Just let it go.
yes, let it go, but then practice.
Right.
Other comments?
I have two sons who are both gay. And the one thing I don't do is I don't keep quiet about it. It doesn't bother me telling people. And I think it's amazing when I do say something, how many people are more accepting of it than I would think.
Well,
I like that. Good.
I have a lesbian sister who's 74 and got married to her companion, a woman, of course, as soon as it was legal. But before that, she hadn't even thought about it until somebody said, it was in the courts and you couldn't do it. And I also have a lesbian granddaughter who's a high school teacher. And I was just wondering about your game. I wonder what she faces with the high school students, knowing a lot about the community and the difficulties that the kids can be having. So,
Do you mean that activity? Yeah, I will send it to Kate if you want. Are you talking about the facilitated activity that I talked about? Yeah. Yeah, it's a way to have a good conversation. She could do that with her students. It's just it's an interesting way. Well, I created it because I wanted to give people that have never had the experience of not fitting in a moment to feel what it would be like. So that's really where the conversation can go.
right. But I want her to see the recording of this too. And for several reasons. I want her to know that I've seen it. And I want her to know that there's a lot of people who are really accepting. And then she's probably kind of obvious to her students. So it might help her to be able to talk to some of them if they're having a problem.
I'm reading this quote, this question by Erin. I think, yeah, I know this is a tricky one, right, for women, because we want to, I think, right, what you want to do is just support women and people that identify as women. Just women identifying, women and female identifying. Does that work? Does that help?
Can you just say what the question was so people know what you're talking about?
Yeah, as a women's advocacy group, how could our group be more inclusive? And I understand, right? Because we women have experienced discrimination and are behind in certain things, which is the first part of this comment. So we do need to keep boosting women as a group, but we can include people that identify as women as well. That's one way to be more inclusive. So you could even put that on your language. You could say, women and women identified, or women and, I think that's the right language. I'm looking to see, remember the trans person that I mentioned and I read their quote, I think they were on this call. I don't know if they're still there. I don't know the proper language for that, but that's something to look into. And I think I would put that right on your website, because that's going to send a signal to that LGBTQ community that, yes, we're still trying to boost women's rights, but we're broadening that definition of women.
Right, and this reminds me of one of our previous programs on intersectionality.
Oh, wow.
That
Good.
person is experiencing a double discrimination, lacking rights as a woman and lacking rights as a transgender. Mm-hmm. So there's a double whammy, so to speak, just like Black women are discriminated against for perhaps 2 reasons, or if they're transgender, perhaps 3 reasons.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's awesome that you did a whole thing on intersectionality. Very
And
good.
that's on our website as well.
You know, you could be messaging me right now. You can message me privately if you want, or if there's any other questions for the big group. I mean, I'd love to know if, you know, what you thought of this. Was this anything like what you expected?
Katie, I have one more question. In your work with other museums, are museums in the suburban area as inclusive as the Children's Museum?
Yeah, yes, I would say there are, like, right, Richard? I mean, that's why camp is called Chicagoland Alliance of Museums with Pride. Did I say that right? Yeah, we've had Morton Arboretum people there. We've had DuPage Children's Museum participate. Elmhurst, I think. I don't know if you can think of any others offhand, Richard, but I would say the museums in general, the community is, you know, and there are a lot of LGBTQ people that work at museums just because it tends to be a little bit more inclusive. So, you know, that's, yes, I would say yes, suburbs and city folks are moving in this direction.
Katie, hi.
Yeah.
My daughter and I have been watching this, and really good information. She is works with a youth group. She's an adult, but she works with a youth group, and she said that first of all, she was like, she's so excited about the Children's Museum and the drag queen story time. She's like, oh, that's so cool. But one of the things that we were just kind of talking in the background about is she has to be careful when she's talking with some of her kids who are LGBTQ, and some of the kids are out and some aren't. And she works with junior high and high school kids, so she works with them, and just kind of the way she talks with other kids around them, around everybody, and like, because they might not be out to everybody, so it's really, we got a lot of stuff out of the meeting, so thank you.
Good. Yeah, those pride clubs are huge at schools. I'm very connected to them.
Yeah, it's not a pride club at school. It's actually a Christian church that she is a leader at. So, and it's a very open church, so, which is good. Good. Yeah. So, but thank you.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that those kids have your daughter as a helper.
Yeah, me too.
Other comments or questions?
Are your slides going to be available?
Yeah, I can send that as a PDF to Kate.
Because I thought it was very informative and it was very basic and a great stepping stone.
Good.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
Good. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, it's oops. I guess we're stopping. Are we stopping? I was reading the chat there, but it kind of went away, so. Katie, I think you have to leave. Oh, we can change our terminology. Those of us old enough to do it. Does everybody see that one? Somebody made the point that, yeah, we used to say colored and then we said Negro and now African American and Black and whatever. It's like, yeah, you just keep up, right? I remember, one of my little stories. I was doing this presentation for a bunch of teachers, and this woman, she's probably 60 years old, and she's like, oh my God, are you serious? I can't address my kids as like boys and girls anymore? And I was like, I know, can you believe it? Like, there's more stuff to learn. We just constantly have to roll with it. As we learn more, we got to keep up with it, and she kind of had a twinkle in her eye, but it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, like, You don't get stuck on what you were saying 20 years ago. It's not for us to decide. You call people what they want to be called.
And there are new things everywhere happening every day, every week. So
Yeah, and it keeps life interesting. Well, it is 9:05, folks. Do we need to adjourn?
what we can do is kind of wrap up, and if people have questions and want to talk further, they can. But we just want to say thank you to everyone, and especially Katie. But we also want to do a little promo of our upcoming programs. And in July, we're going to focus in on conflict, not combat, to try and prevent you from getting into those terrible conflicts. And then in August, we're focused in on the suffrage movement. The Woman's Hour is the thrilling story of winning ratification for the women's vote in the last state, Tennessee. So it's quite an interesting book by Elaine Weiss. So we wanted to mention that in case you want to read that and join us in August.